For 20 years, Chelsea's wings have been the stage where brilliance lived and sometimes died. From 2005 to 2025, through trophies and turmoil, Stamford Bridge became home to some of football's most dazzling wide men. They were the risk takers, the dribblers, the artists, sometimes the scapegoats. Some changed games in seconds, others couldn't make it past their second season. But all of them carried the weight of expectation that comes with pulling wide for Chelsea Football Club. Arjen Robben brought the fear, Joe Cole brought the flair, Florent Malouda, Willian and Pedro brought consistency. And then there was Eden Hazard, who didn't just play as a winger, he played like a magician on borrowed time. Across eras shaped by Mourinho's control, Ancelotti's elegance, Conte's counter-attacks, Tuchel's precision and Pochettino's promise, Chelsea's wingers adapted, evolved and sometimes vanished. For every superstar who rose, there was another whose career stalled under the weight of tactics, injuries or relentless squad turnover. Some arrived as stars, some left as legends, some were forgotten before the season ended. This is the full story, the icons, the nearly men, the cult heroes, the ones who never got their moment. Every Chelsea winger from 2005 to 2025 explained. Before the billions, before the spine of Drogba, Lampard and Terry became legendary, there was Damien Duff, the winger who helped light the fuse of Chelsea's modern era. Signed in the summer of 2003 for £17 million from Blackburn Rovers, Duff arrived at a time when Chelsea were reshaping their identity. Claudio Ranieri brought him in as part of Roman Abramovich's first wave of signings, and almost instantly, Duff showed why he was worth the hype. Quick, two-footed and relentless, Duff wasn't flashy for the sake of it. His game was built on intelligent movement, balance and final product. He hugged the touchline with purpose, always looking to cut in or deliver early. And in a time when Chelsea still lacks the kind of cutting edge that would define their coming dominance, Duff added urgency and directness down the left flank. When Jose Mourinho arrived in 2004, Duff became something even more valuable: tactical. Mourinho loved control, but he trusted Duff to give him width without chaos, a winger who worked hard off the ball, tracked back and contributed just as much defensively as he did going forward. Paired often with Arjen Robben on the opposite wing, the duo became one of the Premier League's most dangerous wide partnerships, fast, clinical and devastating in transition. In the 2004-05 title-winning season, Duff was instrumental, contributing goals, assists and tireless performances as Chelsea stormed to their first league title in 50 years. He repeated the feat again in 2005-06, cementing his status as one of Mourinho's trusted generals. But football at Chelsea moved fast. By 2006, with new arrivals and constant reshuffling, Duff was sold to Newcastle, his chapter over at just 27. No drama, no fallout, just the quiet end of a key role in a club undergoing rapid transformation. Legacy? Underrated. Essential. A player who helps Chelsea bridge the gap between promise and dominance. Damien Duff wasn't the most glamorous name of the Abramovich era, but he was among the first who made the blue shirt mean business again. When Chelsea signed Arjen Robben from PSV Eindhoven in 2004, they weren't just buying a winger. They were bringing in a phenomenon. At just 20 years old, Robben already had the world's attention. Left-footed, rapid and fearless, he arrived as part of Jose Mourinho's first season in charge, and once he shook off early injury struggles, Robben exploded onto the Premier League stage. There was something surgical about him. Robben didn't dance on the ball, he darted. A drop of the shoulder, a shift inside, and then bang! Low curling finishes or vicious near-post strikes. He was devastating in transition, feeding off broken play and tearing through defences like they weren't there. His link-up with Damien Duff on opposite wings gave Chelsea an unpredictability that made them almost unstoppable in 2004-2005. In that title-winning season, Robben was unplayable at times, notching up crucial goals and assists, often in games where Chelsea looked like they needed something special to break through. And Robben was that something special. Even when the goals didn't come, the threat of him alone pinned back defences. But behind the scenes, the warning signs were already flickering. Robben's body couldn't always keep up with his style. Hamstring injuries began to stack up. Mourinho, always obsessed with reliability, grew cautious. In a team built around tactical discipline, Robben's free-spirited style and frequent time on the treatment table made him a wild card. By 2007, Chelsea moved him on to Real Madrid. At just 23, the Premier League had already lost one of its most thrilling wingers, and Chelsea had let go of a player whose best years were still ahead. And those years, phenomenal. Robben would go on to define clutch moments at Bayern Munich, become a Champions League winner, and nearly drag the Netherlands to World Cup glory in 2010. But Chelsea fans were left with only memories. Flashes of brilliance, a career too short in London, and the unshakable question, what if he'd stayed fit and stayed longer? Arjen Robben at Chelsea wasn't a legacy, it was a lightning strike. Brief, blinding, unforgettable. When the Chelsea project kicked off, most of the arrivals came from abroad. But Joe Cole, he came from the streets of West London, and he brought with him a kind of magic that couldn't be coached. Signed in 2003 from West Ham, Joe Cole was already a cult figure in English football, known for his raw creativity, dazzling footwork, and a style that felt more futsal than Premier League. He was the street baller, the showman, but when he arrived at Chelsea, he found himself in a club becoming more machine and playground. Under Claudio Ranieri, Cole struggled to find rhythm. His free-roaming instincts clashed with the tactical discipline expected of a top-four midfielder. But it wasn't until Jose Mourinho arrived in 2004 that Cole was truly challenged, and ironically, refined. Mourinho demanded structure. Joe Cole offered improvisation. But rather than discard him, Mourinho did something rare. He forced Cole to evolve. He made him defend, track runners, press. The message was clear, flair was a luxury, but if you wanted to play in this team, you had to work. And Joe Cole did. In the 2005-06 season, Cole was arguably at his peak, scoring 11 goals in all competitions, including a stunning solo effort against Manchester United that helped clinch the league title. He'd become one of Chelsea's most important attacking outlets, starting ahead of the likes of Duff and Robben, not because he was faster or stronger, but because he had matured into a Mourinho winger. Creative, yes, but also reliable, tough and decisive. But his Chelsea story wasn't all glory. Injuries began to creep in. The arrival of new stars, Malouda, Kalou and eventually Hazard in the years beyond, slowly pushed Cole out of the spotlight. And by 2010, his contract ran out. No fanfare, no farewell, just a quiet departure to Liverpool, ending a 7-year spell at Stamford Bridge. Joe Cole never quite became the global superstar many expected, but for Chelsea, he was much more than hype. He was homegrown heart in a squad full of steel, a player who adapted, survived, and, in his own way, left a lasting imprint on the club's most dominant era. He may not have redefined the position, but for a moment, he gave it a soul. Before the trophies, before the dressing room wars, before Chelsea became Chelsea, there was Adrian Mutu, a player who arrived with promise, flair and fire, and left in scandal, shadows and silence. In 2003, Adrian Mutu was signed from Parma for £15.8 million, one of Roman Abramovich's first marquee signings. Just 24 years old, the Romanian forward had everything: pace, vision, flair, a venomous left foot, and a swagger that made him instantly watchable. Though more of a second striker or inside forward than a traditional winger, Mutu often drifted into wide areas, picking up the ball in space and slicing through defenders with intent. His start was electric. A debut goal, a flurry of finishes in his first month. At a time when Chelsea were still figuring themselves out under Claudio Ranieri, Mutu felt like the future, a free-flowing talent who could help redefine the club's attacking identity. But behind the goals and the grin was instability. By the start of the 2004-2005 season, everything changed. Jose Mourinho arrived. The tone of the club hardened, the margins for error got smaller, and Mutu didn't fit the new mould. His form dipped. Rumours of off-pitch issues began to swirl. He clashed with Mourinho almost immediately, reportedly over fitness and professionalism. The relationship soured quickly. Then came the bombshell. In September 2004, Mutu failed a drug test for cocaine. The result? An immediate 7-month ban, contract termination, and a catastrophic legal battle between Chelsea and player that would drag on for years. Not only did Mutu lose his place at Chelsea, he became a cautionary tale for what happens when talent and discipline collide. He would rebuild his career in Italy with Fiorentina and later become Romania's all-time leading scorer. But at Chelsea, his story ended not in failure, but in fallout. Mutu wasn't just a missed opportunity, he was the ghost of what might have been. In a squad that would go on to win everything, Adrian Mutu stands out as a symbol of the early chaos, the raw talent that the new Chelsea couldn't afford to wait on. A player who arrived just before the empire was built and vanished before he could be part of it. Brilliant, brief, broken. That was Adrian Mutu. In an era defined by stars, swagger and statement signings, Geremain Jatap was none of those things. But for Chelsea, in the turbulent years of transformation, he was exactly what they needed: dependable, disciplined and endlessly adaptable. Signed from Real Madrid in 2003, Geremain arrived at Stamford Bridge with a Champions League medal already in his locker and a reputation as a hard-working, no-nonsense professional. At first glance, he wasn't flashy, he wasn't fast, and in a squad being rebuilt with flamboyant forwards and expensive flair, Geremain's arrival barely made a ripple. But once the season kicked off, Chelsea fans quickly saw his value. Nominally a right midfielder or winger, Geremain was a tactical Swiss army knife. He could play at right back, central midfield or wide right, and he did it all with intelligence and discipline. While others bombed forward, Geremain stayed grounded. He understood positioning, he followed instructions, and he delivered, especially from set pieces, where his powerful right foot often proved deadly. Under Claudio Ranieri, Geremain played a significant role in Chelsea's 2003-04 season, helping the club secure a second-place finish in the league and Champions League qualification. But when Jose Mourinho arrived in 2004, competition intensified. Suddenly, the likes of Joe Cole, Duff, Robben and Thiago crowded the midfield and flanks, and Geremain's minutes began to shrink. Still, Mourinho appreciated his professionalism. Geremain was used as a utility man, covering at right back, coming off the bench to shore up midfield, starting in cup games and never complaining. His presence in the squad wasn't about stardom, it was about stability. By the time he left for Newcastle in 2007, Geremain had won 2 Premier League titles, the League Cup, and carved out a quiet but respected legacy at Stamford Bridge. He wasn't a headline maker, he didn't make the highlight reels, but he was there, always ready, always useful. Geremain represents a different kind of Chelsea winger, one who didn't need flair to make a difference, one who embraced the dirty work and did it better than most. Not every great story is loud, some like Geremain's are steady, solid and essential. Signed from Porto's youth academy in 2002, Felipe Oliveira was seen as one of Portugal's brightest teenage prospects. A technically gifted right winger with sharp acceleration, intelligent movement and a good eye for goal, he arrived at Stamford Bridge just before the Abramovich revolution began and just as Chelsea started shifting from development to dominance. Oliveira made his senior debut in the 2002-03 season under Claudio Ranieri at just 18 years old. In a team filled with transition and inconsistency, he offered glimpses of promise, sharp touches, smart passing and flashes of creativity down the right flank. But those glimpses were fleeting. As the money rolled in, the patience for development started to dry up. By the time players like Jeremy, Duff and Robben arrived, Oliveira found himself buried in the depth chart. He was loaned out to Preston North End and later Maritimo in Portugal, stints that failed to reignite his Chelsea hopes. Despite some solid performances at youth and reserve levels, he never managed to break back into the first team. In 2006, after just 5 senior appearances, his Chelsea chapter quietly ended. Felipe Oliveira was a player caught between 2 eras, signed in the hopeful days of long-term projects, but left behind in the ruthless new age of results and superstars. He would go on to have a journeyman career in Portugal and Cyprus, showing quality in flashes, but never quite reaching the level once imagined for him. His name is barely remembered today, a footnote in a squad that evolved too quickly for youth to survive. Felipe Oliveira wasn't a failure. He was a reminder of what Chelsea once were and how fast everything changed. When Chelsea signed Sean Wright-Phillips in 2005, it wasn't just a transfer, it was a statement. £21 million for a 23-year-old from Manchester City. Young, homegrown, explosive, he was meant to be the next great English winger. But at Stamford Bridge, promises don't always turn into legacies. At City, Wright-Phillips was electric, a blur of pace, low centre of gravity and fearless dribbling. He could beat defenders one-on-one, cut inside and shoot, or hug the touchline and deliver. The son of Ian Wright, but determined to carve his own name, SWP had dazzled the league enough to earn both international recognition and Chelsea's attention. When he arrived at Jose Mourinho's title-winning machine, many thought he'd add flair to an already ruthless side. But from the beginning, something felt off. The competition was brutal. Joe Cole, Arjen Robben, Damien Duff, all in or approaching their peak. Wright Phillips, once the focal point at City, suddenly became a rotation option. Mourinho demanded tactical discipline, defensive effort, and end product, all areas where Wright Phillips was still developing. He didn't score a single goal in his first season. The pace was still there, the intent too, but the confidence faded. Moments of brilliance came in flashes, a few crucial goals in the 2006-07 season, lively performances in cup games, and a trademark fearlessness in one-on-one situations. But too often, the final ball was missing. At Chelsea, every decision mattered. Wright Phillips, so instinctive at City, began to overthink. Still, he was part of a successful era, winning the Premier League, FA Cup and League Cup, and featuring in deep Champions League runs. But he never fully claimed a starting spot. For a £21 million signing, expectations weighed heavily. In 2008, after 3 mixed seasons, he returned to Manchester City, older, more experienced, but never quite the breakout star Chelsea hoped for. Sean Wright Phillips at Chelsea was not a flop, but a lesson in timing and fit. A player full of raw ability, brought into a team where the margins were razor thin and development came second to results. He came with speed and promise, he left with silverware and scars.
Before Cobham became a factory line of first-team talent, it was a graveyard for young dreams. And in that era, no name carried more hype or more heartbreak than Scott Sinclair. Signed from Bristol Rovers as a teenager in 2005, Sinclair was a standout, blisteringly quick, silky on the ball, and deadly in youth competitions. He tore up games at reserve level, danced through defences in the FA Youth Cup, and looks destined to be the next homegrown winger to break the mould at Chelsea. And Chelsea believed it too. Sinclair was fast-tracked into the first-team setup by Jose Mourinho, making his senior debut at just 17 years old. Every time he appeared, mostly in cup games or brief league cameos, he played with fearlessness. But breaking into Chelsea's starting 11 was another beast entirely. The wing positions were occupied by the likes of Malouda, Joe Cole, Kalu and Wright Phillips. And Chelsea, chasing trophies every season, had no margin for growing pains. Instead of game time, Sinclair was sent on loan after loan. Plymouth, QPR, Charlton, Crystal Palace, Birmingham, Wigan, 7 different clubs in total, each time showing glimpses of quality but never staying long enough to settle. By 2010, with just 14 senior Chelsea appearances, Sinclair quietly left the club to join Swansea City, a step down on paper but the best move of his career. At Swansea, finally trusted and given minutes, he exploded. Goals, assists, a starring role in their promotion campaign, and a hat-trick in the Championship playoff final. The player Chelsea fans had been waiting to see finally arrived. And that's the tragedy of Sinclair's Chelsea story. It wasn't about talent, it was about timing, trust, and opportunity. At Stamford Bridge, he was a star in the shadows, never fully given the stage. Scott Sinclair is a symbol of the era before the breakthrough, when Chelsea's best young talents weren't nurtured but loaned out and let go. He never failed, he just never got the chance to succeed.
He wasn't the fastest, he wasn't the flashiest, and he wasn't the headline maker, but Salah and Kalu, across 6 unpredictable years at Stamford Bridge, became something even rarer: reliable. When Salah and Kalu joined Chelsea from Feyenoord in 2006, he was already carrying the weight of expectation. Young, talented and Ivorian, he drew instant comparisons to his compatriot and future teammate Didier Drogba. But while Drogba was thunder, Kalu was subtlety, less force, more finesse. A natural winger who could also play centrally, Kalu's game was all about intelligent movement, close control, and a knack for showing up in the right place at the right time. He may not have had the dribbling flair of a Robben or the power of a Malouda, but he was effective, and perhaps more importantly, coachable. Under Jose Mourinho, Avram Grant, Scolari, Hiddink, Ancelotti, and finally Roberto Di Matteo, Kalu survived. That in itself says something. Across different systems, philosophies and styles, he found ways to contribute, whether from the start or off the bench. He was the ultimate squad player, but never just filler. His numbers speak quietly but clearly: over 250 appearances for Chelsea, 60 goals, and a number of key contributions in major moments.
He scored in title races, domestic cup runs, and even the Champions League. In fact, he was part of the squad that lifted the Champions League trophy in 2012, starting in multiple knockout games on the road to Munich. His relationship with fans was often complex. To some, he lacks the killer edge or consistency of Chelsea's top-tier attackers. But to those who paid attention, Kalou was a player who made others better, who fit in rather than stood out, and who never let ego get in the way of the team. In 2012, after achieving the club's holy grail, he left quietly. Contract expired, mission completed. Salomon Kalou's Chelsea story isn't told with fireworks, it's told in trust, in adaptability, in longevity. He wasn't the star, but without players like him, the stars don't shine.
Some players arrive with hype, others with noise. Florent Malouda arrived with elegance and left with silverware. When Malouda joined Chelsea in 2007 from Lyon, he was already a proven winner. 4 Ligue 1 titles, a Ligue 1 Player of the Year award, and countless dazzling performances on the European stage. He had been a central figure in a dominant Lyon side, a tricky, tactically intelligent winger who combined pace with precision. At Stamford Bridge, he was expected to be the long-term replacement for Arjen Robben, who departed for Real Madrid just weeks later. But his debut season under Jose Mourinho and then Avram Grant was uneven. Injuries, tactical reshuffling, and adaptation to the Premier League's physical demands held him back. There were flashes, a goal in the Community Shield, a few incisive runs, but it wasn't yet the Malouda Chelsea paid for. That changed dramatically the following year. Under Guus Hiddink and then Carlo Ancelotti, Malouda flourished. Operating mainly on the left wing, he became Chelsea's tactical heartbeat down that side. Not just a traditional winger hugging the touchline, but a hybrid playmaker who could drift inside, combine with Lampard and Drogba, or slide through defenders with clever movement. His peak came in the 2009-10 season as part of Ancelotti's ruthless, free-scoring Chelsea side. Malouda was electric, scoring 15 goals, providing assists and dominating big games. He helped Chelsea win the Premier League and the FA Cup double, playing some of the best football of his career. What set him apart wasn't just his skill, it was his discipline, his understanding of space, and his ability to make the right decision in the final third. While others wowed with flair, Malouda built his legacy with consistency. He stayed with the club until 2013, eventually winning 4 FA Cups, a Premier League title, and the 2012 UEFA Champions League, a final in which he played through pain, putting team before self as Chelsea etched their name into history in Munich. His final season saw him exiled from the squad, frozen out, training with the under-21s, and eventually released. But the damage had already been done, to opponents, not to his legacy. Florent Malouda was not the loudest name on the team sheet, but when Chelsea needed structure, control, and class, he was always there. A technician, a champion, a winger who played like a general.
There are some players who feel like a secret. A flash of brilliance on a cold night, a name whispered with cult-like nostalgia. Miroslav Stoch was that kind of player, a glimpse of something special, gone before it truly began. Signed from Slovakian club Nitra in 2006 at just 16 years old, Stoch joined Chelsea's academy with a growing reputation as a fearless, technical winger. Small in stature but bursting with pace, close control and sharp footwork, he quickly made waves in the youth ranks. He could dance past defenders, strike from distance, and glide through tight spaces like he belonged under the lights of the Premier League. Chelsea fans took notice. He wasn't just good, he was fun to watch, he was electric. By 2008, under Luis Felipe Scolari and later Guus Hiddink, Stoch was promoted to the senior squad. He made his debut in a Premier League match against Arsenal, and across the 2008-09 season appeared in a handful of games, each cameo brimming with energy as if he had something to prove every second he was on the pitch. But time is not a luxury Chelsea gave to young players back then. With the club chasing silverware and stocked with seasoned internationals like Malouda, Kalou, Joe Cole and Anelka, Stoch's opportunities were scarce. And like many of his generation, the path forward led not through London, but away from it. He was loaned to FC Twente in the 2009-10 season, and that's where the world saw what Chelsea never quite gave him the space to become. Stock lit up the Eredivisie, scoring goals, creating chances, and helping Twente win their first ever Dutch league title. His performances were dazzling, so much so that Fenerbahce swooped in to sign him permanently. Over the following years, he'd have a solid career, winning the 2012 FIFA Puskás Award for a thunderous goal while playing for Slovakia, becoming a regular for his national team, and starring in various leagues across Europe. But his Chelsea chapter remained unfinished, brief, beautiful, and a little bittersweet. Miroslav Stoch was a glimpse into what could have been, a reminder of how easily brilliance can slip through the cracks when timing, trust, and opportunity don't align. He didn't fail, he simply wasn't given time to grow.
There are some footballers who are pure poetry, not in their stats, but in their style. Ricardo Quaresma was one of them. A magician with a ball at his feet, a winger who could bend physics with a single outside foot pass. But in Chelsea blue, he was a whisper, a flicker, a name on a team sheet that never truly became a memory. By the time Quaresma arrived at Chelsea on loan from Inter Milan in February 2009, his name already carried both excitement and baggage. Once hailed as the next big thing at Sporting CP, even ahead of a young Cristiano Ronaldo, Quaresma's journey had been a winding one. From Barcelona to Porto, where he dazzled with outrageous flair, to Inter, where things had soured under Mourinho. It was Mourinho again who brought him to Chelsea, this time in a desperate search for width and creativity during a turbulent season that saw Luis Felipe Scolari sacked mid-season. Quaresma came with a reputation, travellas, stepovers, raw flair, but also inconsistency and an aversion to discipline. At Chelsea, he had just a few months to prove he could still matter. In reality, he barely featured. Just 5 appearances in all competitions, no goals, no assists, a couple of flashes, a trick here, a cross there, but little impact. He looked like a man caught between his artistry and the unforgiving tempo of the Premier League. It wasn't that he lacked talent, far from it. It was that he'd arrived too late into a team with no patience for flair without function. By the summer, he was gone. Loan expired, chapter closed. Still, for those who knew his story, Quaresma was more than a failed Chelsea footnote. He was a reminder of football's romantic tragedy, the eternal clash between beauty and structure, between the streets and the system. A winger made for the highlight reel, dropped into a league that demanded end product over elegance. At Chelsea, Quaresma was a ghost in silk boots, glimpsed, never grasped, not a legend, not even a contributor, just a cameo from another world. Signed in 2007 from Bologna as a highly rated Italian teenager, Borini was brought in to be the next intelligent number 9 in the mould of Filippo Inzaghi, a forward who thrived on movement, sharp finishing and instincts inside the box. He quickly became a standout for Chelsea's reserve and youth teams, banging goals with a predator's certainty. At a time when Chelsea's striker pool featured Drogba, Anelka and Kalou, Borini was seen as a project, but one worth nurturing. His debut came under Luis Felipe Scolari in 2009, and he would go on to make 8 senior appearances, mostly in domestic cup competitions and a few off-the-bench cameos. He showed flashes, smart runs, quick reactions and an eye for goal, but timing was against him. Injuries slowed his momentum, and managerial changes from Scolari to Hiddink to Ancelotti created a revolving door that made youth integration difficult. Borini's defining Chelsea moment never really arrived. The path forward became muddled. In 2011, with his contract expiring, he went on loan to Swansea City, and in just 9 appearances scored 6 goals, helping them secure promotion to the Premier League. It was a turning point, but not one that led back to Stamford Bridge. Borini left Chelsea permanently later that year, joining Parma, before eventually landing at Liverpool, Sunderland, and a long career across Serie A. He never quite became the striker Chelsea had hoped for, but he carved out a professional journey marked by resilience and reinvention. Fabio Borini was one of the last promising attackers from Chelsea's pre-Cobham breakthrough era, a product of potential but a victim of circumstance. At Chelsea, he was a spark that never got oxygen, a striker who might have, with patience, grown into something more, but like so many others of his time, found his path elsewhere. Before the injuries, before the dances, before Liverpool in the near title charge, there was Daniel Sturridge at Chelsea.
a raw, electric forward whose brilliance flickered but never quite caught fire at Stamford Bridge. Signed from Manchester City in 2009, Sturridge arrived as one of the brightest young English attackers of his generation. Quick, two-footed and lethal in tight spaces, he was the prototype for the modern forward, equally capable on the wing or through the middle and never shy of confidence. In fact, confidence was never his problem. Patience was. At Chelsea, he was stepping into a world ruled by titans. Didier Drogba, Nicolas Anelka, and a veteran core chasing silverware year after year. Sturridge wasn't just competing with names, he was battling a system. The 4-3-3 often kept him wide, using his pace to stretch play, but limiting his true instinct, scoring. Still, when chances came, he delivered. In the 2010-11 season, on loan at Bolton Wanderers, he exploded, scoring 8 goals in 12 games and reminding everyone of the striker he could become if trusted centrally. That loan changed perceptions. When he returned to Chelsea under Andre Villas-Boas, Sturridge finally got minutes and repaid them with goals. He hit 13 goals in the 2011-12 campaign, becoming a regular contributor during a turbulent season that ended in triumph. He was part of the squad that won the FA Cup and Champions League in 2012, even if his involvement in the final stages was limited. But even as trophies arrived, it became increasingly clear. Sturridge wanted to be the main man, not a supporting act. Chelsea, with Drogba still dominant and Torres still trusted, couldn't offer that. In January 2013, Sturridge left for Liverpool, and within months exploded into one of the Premier League's most dangerous forwards. Looking back, Sturridge's Chelsea chapter feels like a prelude. A place where talent was visible but untapped, and where his ceiling always seemed just out of reach. He scored 24 goals in 96 appearances, many of them clever, clinical and instinctive, but he never became a guaranteed starter. Daniel Sturridge at Chelsea was potential in motion, fast, graceful and unpredictable. He wasn't failed, but maybe he wasn't fully understood. In the summer of 2009, Chelsea didn't just sign a footballer, they signed a statement. Fresh off a dazzling run at Euro 2008, where he was named in the team of the tournament, Yuri Zirkov arrived in London with the weight of expectation and the spotlight of curiosity. He was Russia's crown jewel, a marauding, technical left-sider who could play anywhere from fullback to winger, but at Stamford Bridge his brilliance never quite found a home. Signed from CSKA Moscow for around £18 million, Zirkov became the most expensive Russian player at the time. He was a man in motion, constantly overlapping, linking, delivering inch-perfect crosses. He had that glide in possession, the kind that makes a player look like he's floating past defenders. But Chelsea didn't need a new hero on the left, they already had one. Ashley Cole was in his prime, cemented as one of the best left-backs in the world. Further forward, Malouda was dominant. For Zirkov, it meant being a luxury option, a versatile backup rather than a system essential. Still, when he played, he impressed. His standout performances came in cup competitions and during a crucial spell in the 2009-10 title-winning campaign when Cole was injured. Zirkov stepped in and held his own, especially in vital games like the 2-1 win over Manchester United at Old Trafford, which proved pivotal in Chelsea's title push. He also featured in Chelsea's FA Cup final win over Portsmouth that season, helping secure the club's first ever domestic double. Quietly, without headlines, he had contributed to history, but nagging injuries, cultural adaptation, and limited starts chipped away at his momentum. Zirkov was never poor, far from it, but he remained on the edges of a Chelsea team packed with depth. By 2011, after just 49 appearances in all competitions, he returned to Russia with Anzhi Makachkala, ending a short but curious stint in West London. In hindsight, Yuri Zirkov's Chelsea spell feels like a dream half remembered. Talented, technically sound, even successful, but somehow always just out of view.
When Benayoun signed from Liverpool in 2010, it was a low-profile move. The Israeli international had been one of the most graceful and creative midfielders in the Premier League, capable of unlocking defences with a clever pass, a drop of the shoulder, or a curling strike. At Liverpool, he was a fan favourite, delivering clutch moments against the biggest clubs. But Chelsea didn't sign him to be a star, they signed him to be depth. Still, there was quiet excitement. At a time when Chelsea were evolving, looking to transition from the raw power of the Drogba-Lampard era to something a bit more refined, Benayoun offered a different texture, a silkier option between the lines. But fate didn't cooperate. Just months into his debut season, Benayoun tore his Achilles while on international duty, an injury that sidelined him for nearly the entire 2010-11 campaign. By the time he returned, Chelsea had changed direction. He spent the next 2 years in loan limbo at Arsenal, West Ham, and later QPR, never truly reclaiming his rhythm at Stamford Bridge. In total, he made just 14 appearances for Chelsea, scoring 1 goal, but it was a memorable one, a late equaliser against Wigan in April 2012. It was vintage Benayoun, drifting in from the edge of the box, placing the ball where few others would think to. That same year, Chelsea would go on to win the Champions League and FA Cup. Benayoun wasn't part of those final moments, but he had played his quiet role in the supporting cast, helping to rotate and relieve during the long grinding season. Yossi Benayoun's Chelsea story is one of what ifs. What if he'd stayed fit? What if the timing was different? What if he'd had more trust? He had the vision, the technique, the temperament, but sometimes the stage just never clears.
He was the future, the next great hope, a left-footed maestro with a low centre of gravity and a YouTube reel that had scouts salivating. Gaël Kakuta wasn't just a Chelsea youngster, he was meant to be the one. But the road from wonder kid to world class is rarely straight, and for Kakuta it bent too soon, too often. Signed in 2007 from French side Lens, Kakuta arrived amid serious controversy. Chelsea were handed a transfer ban later overturned due to the way the deal was handled, a ban that only magnified the mystique around this young Frenchman. If the club was willing to risk it all for him, he must be special. And for a while he looked it. At youth level, Kakuta was unplayable, gliding past defenders with ease, threading impossible passes, scoring goals that didn't make sense for a teenager. He won Chelsea's Academy Player of the Year twice in a row and was considered the jewel of the club's emerging youth revolution. His first team debut came in November 2009, aged just 18, in a Premier League match against Wolves. The buzz was instant. He looked confident, technically gifted and sharp in tight spaces. Chelsea fans, desperate for a homegrown star, thought they'd found their future. But the breakthrough never came. Kakuta's path was blocked by the club's win-now mentality, established stars, new signings, constant managerial changes. Like so many prospects in the pre-Cobham boom, he was sent out on loan after loan. Fulham, Bolton, Dijon, Vitesse, Lazio, each spell offering hope but no real foundation. By the time he left Chelsea permanently in 2015, he'd made just 6 senior appearances for the club. The player who was once hailed as the next Eden Hazard before Hazard had even arrived became the symbol of Chelsea's flawed youth integration of the early 2010s, a golden talent left out in the cold. To his credit, Kakuta rebuilt his career elsewhere, starring in Ligue 1 with Amiens and Lens, and eventually earning a senior call-up for the distant Congo national team. But at Chelsea, his legacy is one of unfulfilled promise. Gaël Kakuta was a victim of timing, of hype, of a system not yet ready to trust youth, a star that flickered far too early and too far from the spotlight he was promised.
He arrived with a smile full of promise and a left foot that whispered of greatness. A Brazilian golden boy, dubbed the next Kaká, Lucas Piazon was supposed to be Chelsea's next elegant star. But instead of conquering Stamford Bridge, he became something else entirely, the longest-serving ghost in Chelsea's modern history. Signed in 2011 from Sao Paulo, Piazon was just 17 when he touched down in West London. Tall, graceful, intelligent on the ball, he lit up Chelsea youth teams almost instantly. In his first season with the U18s and reserves, he won the club's Young Player of the Year award and helped lead the FA Youth Cup campaign, pulling strings like a veteran playmaker. By 2012, he'd made his senior debut, featuring in League Cup and Premier League matches. In flashes, the quality was obvious. Weight of pass, vision in the final third, that classic Brazilian glide in tight spaces. He even notched an assist and came close to scoring in an 8-0 rout of Aston Villa. The comparisons to Kaká felt premature, but not entirely outlandish. But that brief glimpse would be the beginning and the end of his first team story. From 2013 onward, Piazon vanished into the loan system, a carousel of clubs and continents that became his second home. Malaga, Vitesse, Eintracht Frankfurt, Reading, Fulham, Chievo, Rio Ave, the list reads like a footballing gap year passport.
He played well in spells, especially in the Eredivisie and at Fulham, but the return ticket to Chelsea never came. Ironically, Piazon became Chelsea's longest-serving player, staying on the books for a full decade while making just 3 senior appearances. More than any other name, his story embodied an era where young talents were collected, polished, and then parked, waiting for a moment that never arrived. In 2021, Piazon finally cut ties and signed permanently with Braga in Portugal. He was no longer a prodigy, but a seasoned professional, shaped not by minutes at Stamford Bridge, but by the years he spent everywhere else. Lucas Piazon's Chelsea story is both unique and familiar, a tale of promise, prolonged limbo, and eventual escape.
Some players light up a match, others light up a generation. Eden Hazard didn't just dazzle, he dominated with a smile, danced past defenders like they were illusions, and turned Stamford Bridge into his stage for 7 unforgettable years. In Chelsea Blue, he wasn't just a winger, he was a magician, a maverick, and at times a one-man show. When Chelsea signed Hazard in 2012 from Lille, the excitement was instant, not just because of who they'd signed, but how. The reigning Champions League winners had just won the ultimate prize, and now they were adding Europe's most coveted young star. A playmaker who could dribble like Messi, pass like Iniesta, and strike with both elegance and venom. From his very first Premier League game, Hazard announced himself with an assist and a drawn penalty. By the end of his debut season, it was clear Chelsea hadn't just signed a talent, they'd signed a future legend. But his true greatness unfolded gradually, season by season. He could go through entire midfields, absorb fouls like body armour, turn tight games on their head with one moment of brilliance. No tactic could stop him, no marker could contain him. For Chelsea, Hazard was the weapon they turned to when nothing else worked. Under Jose Mourinho, he became ruthless, combining his natural flair with a new work ethic. He helped lead Chelsea to a 2014-15 Premier League title, winning PFA Player of the Year in the process. That season, he wasn't just the best player at the club, he was the best player in England. His highlights reel became endless. That solo goal against Arsenal in 2017, the last-minute winner at Anfield that dumped Liverpool out of the League Cup, a jaw-dropping run against West Ham that felt like a tribute to Maradona, his final masterclass, 2 goals and an assist in the 2019 Europa League final, his Chelsea swan song. In total, 110 goals, 92 assists, 7 trophies and countless memories. But beyond the numbers, it was his joy, his unpredictability, his fearlessness that defined him. Hazard never played for stats, he played for moments, and he delivered them with charm and chaos. When he finally left in 2019 for Real Madrid, it was bittersweet. The timing was right, but the loss felt heavy. Chelsea had lost not just a star, they had lost their identity. Hazard had been their beating heart. Eden Hazard wasn't just Chelsea's greatest modern winger, he was Chelsea's golden age wrapped in a number 10 shirt. A magician, a leader without words, and a legend whose story will forever echo through Stamford Bridge.
His Chelsea story was never meant to end in glory. For years, Victor Moses was a name buried in loan reports. A talented winger signed young, loaned endlessly, and largely forgotten. But then, like a plot twist no one saw coming, he returned. Reinvented, reborn. And in one magical season, he helped Chelsea conquer the Premier League in a way no one expected. Signed in 2012 from Wigan Athletic, Moses joined Chelsea as a raw but exciting winger. Strong, direct, and fearless in one-on-ones. He impressed in his debut season, scoring in the Champions League, FA Cup, and Europa League, even playing a part in Chelsea's 2013 Europa League triumph under Rafa Benitez. But what followed was the familiar cycle of the era, the loan treadmill. Liverpool, Stoke, West Ham. Moses showed flashes at each stop, but nothing permanent. As Chelsea evolved under different managers, his name faded into the shadows. By 2016, no one expected him to play again for Chelsea. But then came Antonio Conte, and with him, a new system and an unlikely hero. Conte's switch to a 3-4-3 formation changed everything. He saw something no one else did. Moses, with his pace, work rate and strength, was the perfect right wing-back. Not a winger anymore, not a passenger, a system player. And suddenly, Moses was starting every week. Not just fitting in, but thriving. He was relentless, up and down the flank, defending deep, attacking wide, scoring, assisting, intercepting. He brought balance to the system, and freedom to Hazard and Alonso on the opposite side. In a team filled with stars, Moses became indispensable. Chelsea went on to win the 2016-17 Premier League title, and Victor Moses was a key part of it, starting 34 league games, a number no one would have predicted a year earlier. He stayed involved under Sarri, but eventually faded again as Chelsea moved in new directions. But by then, his story had already been written. Victor Moses' Chelsea journey is a rare one, from the edge of obscurity to a central figure in a title-winning side. He didn't just make a comeback, he made history. Some players don't stay long, but in the short time they do, they leave behind sparks, flashes that remind you of their quality even years after they're gone. André Schürrle was one of those players. A winger with blistering pace, a rocket of a shot, and a role in moments that mattered, both for Chelsea and history. Signed in 2013 from Bayer Leverkusen for around £18 million, Schürrle arrived at Chelsea with the reputation of a rising star in German football. Quick, clinical, and capable of playing across the front three. Under Jose Mourinho, he wasn't always a guaranteed starter, but he was always trusted in the big moments. His Chelsea debut season was solid, 9 goals in all competitions, including a stunning hat-trick against Fulham at Craven Cottage. He was the kind of player who could shift a game in a heartbeat. Fast on the break, lethal from distance, and unafraid to take risks, the perfect weapon in Mourinho's counter-attacking blueprint. He also had a rare sense of occasion. In Chelsea's dramatic 2013-14 Champions League quarter-final against PSG, it was Schürrle who came off the bench to reignite belief, scoring the first goal and nearly assisting the second. Chelsea completed the comeback that night, and Schürrle's impact was undeniable. In the following season, he played his part in what would become a Premier League winning campaign. But by January 2015, the writing was on the wall. With Willian rising, Cuadrado incoming, and Mourinho fine-tuning his squad, Schürrle was sold to Wolfsburg. Still, he left with a medal and more than a few key moments. Looking back, Schürrle's Chelsea story was a brief but brilliant chapter. A player who never fully found rhythm in a rotational system, but who made his minutes count. A comet, not a constant, but unforgettable.
In Mohamed Salah's Chelsea chapter, we find the most famous sliding door in modern football. A young Egyptian winger, raw but electric, who arrived too early, was overlooked too soon, and left just before becoming unstoppable. Chelsea signed Salah in January 2014 from FC Basel after he'd tormented them in Europe with his pace and precision. He was only 21 and the idea was clear: bring in the next generation of wide threats. On paper, Salah had it all: blistering speed, a left foot made for cutting inside, and fearlessness beyond his years. He debuted under Jose Mourinho, but quickly found himself on the fringes of a squad stacked with attacking talent. Hazard, Willian, Schürrle, Oscar. Opportunities were limited, and when they did come, he looked raw. Flashes of quality, but no rhythm. Still learning the physicality of the English game. In total, Salah made just 19 appearances for Chelsea, scoring only 2 goals, including one in the iconic 6-0 demolition of Arsenal on Arsene Wenger's 1000th game. But the system didn't fit him, and Mourinho didn't trust him. In 2015, he was sent out on loan, first to Fiorentina, then to Roma. And that's where the transformation began. In Italy, Salah became lethal, refining his end product, sharpening his decision-making, and adding muscle to his frame. Roma turned him into a complete forward. But by the time Chelsea had the chance to bring him back, it was too late. In 2017, he signed for Liverpool, and the rest is Premier League history. A record-breaking debut season, a Ballon d'Or contender, Golden Boots, Champions League and Premier League titles, goals, goals and more goals, and through it all, a lingering question for Chelsea fans. What if we had just waited? Mohamed Salah became one of the greatest wingers the league has ever seen, just not in blue. At Chelsea, he was a footnote. Elsewhere, he became a headline. His story isn't one of failure, it's one of misjudged timing. And it stands as a reminder that sometimes letting go of a player too soon doesn't just cost you, it changes history.
Or a brief moment, Bertrand Traoré looked like he might be the next gem to rise from Chelsea's youth pipeline. A left-footed attacker with flair, composure, and that unmistakable air of African elegance. But like so many during the era of excess and endless loans, his story flickered, then faded. Traoré's journey to Stamford Bridge began long before his official debut. Chelsea had their eyes on him from his early teenage years at Auxerre, and after extended trials, he officially signed in 2014 once he turned 18. But this wasn't just a punt on youth.
Traoré had already shone for Burkina Faso's national team, and there was real belief he could break through. After a productive loan at Vitesse Arnhem, the Dutch proving ground for many Chelsea prospects, he returned to London in 2015-16, ready to compete, and under Gus Hiddink he got his chance, and he delivered. In limited appearances, Traoré scored 4 goals in just 5 Premier League starts, including a stunning curler against Stoke and a smart finish versus Manchester City in the FA Cup. He looked elegant in motion, gliding past defenders, linking well with midfield, and striking the ball with poise. He could play wide or central, left foot or right. He had the tools. But despite his promise, the club moved in another direction. With a new manager on the horizon, Antonio Conte, and a squad reshuffle incoming, Traoré was sent out again, this time to Ajax. In Amsterdam, he blossomed, playing a key role in the team's run to the 2017 Europa League final, even scoring in the semi-final against Lyon. He looked ready, but Chelsea, deep in the loan and sell cycle, saw him more as value than a future starter. That summer, he was sold to Lyon permanently, ending his Chelsea journey after just 16 senior appearances and 5 goals. For fans, Traoré remains one of the great what-ifs, a player who did nothing wrong yet never quite had the runway to take off at Stamford Bridge. His career since has been steady, if unspectacular, but he continues to shine on the international stage for Burkina Faso, where he's a captain, a leader and a symbol of pride. Bertrand Traoré's Chelsea chapter was short but sweet. In a decade of turbulence and triumph, Willian was Chelsea's constant pulse. Signed in August 2013 from Anzi Makachkala, Willian's arrival was already dramatic. He'd passed a medical at Tottenham, but Chelsea swooped in late, sealing a £30 million deal and robbing their London rivals of a prize target. And from that moment, he never looked back. Under Jose Mourinho, Willian quickly earned his stripes. He was the perfect system player, fast, disciplined and intelligent. While Hazard dazzled on the left, Willian locked down the right with tireless tracking and timely goals. In the 2014-15 title-winning season, he wasn't just a winger, he was a worker, the glue that kept Chelsea balanced. But perhaps his finest individual campaign came during Chelsea's 2015-16 disaster season, when Mourinho was sacked and the club sank to 10th. Amidst the chaos, Willian stood tall, scoring vital goals, winning Chelsea's Player of the Season, and proving himself a leader in spirit and performance. With the arrival of Antonio Conte, he found himself rotated more, with Pedro often starting ahead. Yet, when called upon, Willian always delivered, bringing energy off the bench, breaking lines in transition, and popping up with goals in big games. He won his second Premier League title in 2016-17 and added FA Cup and Europa League titles to his cabinet. Over 7 seasons, Willian played 339 games, scored 63 goals and delivered 62 assists. More than stats though, it was his consistency that made him vital. Managers changed, formations shifted, teammates rotated, but Willian was always ready, often underappreciated but rarely missing when it mattered. He had his big moments too, free kick goals against Barcelona, Tottenham and Shakhtar, a stunning brace at Anfield in the 2015 League Cup, a goal and a starring role in the 2019 Europa League campaign. He left Chelsea in 2020 seeking a new challenge at Arsenal, a move that never reached the same heights, but his Chelsea legacy remained intact. Willian was never the headline act, but he was the heartbeat in the background, dependable, driven and always playing for the badge. In an era where flash often trumps function, Willian was the reminder that work rate, resilience and intelligence win you trophies.
Some players come and go without ever making a first-team appearance. But every now and then, one of those players leaves behind more than minutes. They leave behind a memory, a moment, or a legacy that transcends football. Christian Atsu was one of them. Signed by Chelsea in 2013 from FC Porto, the Ghanaian winger was just 21, full of potential and often compared to African greats like Michael Essien and even a young Hazard for his low centre of gravity, quick feet and attacking instinct. He was seen as one for the future, an explosive left footer who could beat a man and whip in dangerous crosses. But the future never quite arrived at Stamford Bridge. Atsu didn't make a competitive appearance for Chelsea. Like so many in the club's sprawling loan system, he was sent out immediately to Vitesse, Everton, Bournemouth, Malaga and Newcastle.
There were glimmers like his performances at Vitesse or his role in Newcastle's 2016-17 championship-winning season, but he was never able to fully break through. Still, his time in England showed his character. By all accounts, Atsu was a model professional, quiet, humble, generous, and beloved by teammates wherever he went. Even after he left Chelsea permanently for Newcastle in 2017, he continued to serve with dignity on and off the pitch. Internationally, he shone brighter. Atsu was a key figure for Ghana's national team, earning over 60 caps and starring in multiple African Cup of Nations tournaments. He was named Player of the Tournament and Goal of the Tournament at AFCON 2015, a reminder of the talent that had earned Chelsea's attention years earlier. But Atsu's story turned heartbreaking in 2023 when he tragically lost his life in the devastating earthquake in Turkey, where he was playing for Hatayspor. The football world mourned not just the loss of a player, but of a kind-hearted soul, a philanthropist, and a man who used his platform to support orphan children and build schools back home in Ghana. Christian Atsu may not have left a legacy on the pitch at Chelsea, but his legacy off it will never be forgotten. He was a footballer, yes, but more importantly, he was a force for good.
When Chelsea signed Thorgan Hazard in 2012, the story was already written, or so it seemed. He was the younger brother of Eden, the marquee signing, the game changer, the star. But beneath the shadow of greatness, Thorgan had his own path to carve, even if it would lead him far from Stamford Bridge. Signed from RC Lens shortly after Eden joined from Lille, Thorgan's transfer felt more symbolic than strategic at first, a gesture to unite the Hazard brothers in blue. But behind that narrative was a player with real promise, intelligent in possession, technically sound, and blessed with versatility in attacking midfield and on the wings. Yet unlike Eden, Thorgan never made a senior appearance for Chelsea. Instead, he was immediately loaned out, first to Zulte Waregem in Belgium, where he flourished. There, out of the spotlight, he became one of the league's standout players, winning the Belgian Golden Shoe 2013 as the best footballer in the country, a feat his brother never achieved. It was no longer just Eden's sibling. Thorgan was becoming a name in his own right. His performances earned him another loan, this time to Borussia Mönchengladbach. And eventually, the move became permanent in 2015. Chelsea had seen enough to insert a buyback clause, but never activated it. In Germany, Thorgan matured into a brilliant attacking midfielder, a creative force who could play wide, centrally, or behind the striker. He became a Bundesliga star, earned regular caps for Belgium, and eventually made the leap to Borussia Dortmund, where he continued to impress with goals, assists, and composure under pressure. Looking back, his Chelsea stint is a curious footnote. A club that saw his potential, nurtured it from afar, but never truly brought him into the fold. Thorgan Hazard never wore the Chelsea shirt in a competitive match, but he wore the badge, and from that foundation, he built a career of his own. He was never just Eden's brother. He became Thorgan in full. Lightning in his boots, swagger in his stride, Juan Cuadrado arrived at Chelsea in 2015 with flair, pedigree, and Premier League expectations on his shoulders. But some players are made for the moment, and some arrive just as the moment begins to collapse. Signed in January 2015 for around £23 million from Fiorentina, Cuadrado had been one of Serie A's most exciting players, a high-octane winger with dazzling feet, blistering pace, and an ability to play anywhere up the right side. His standout displays at the 2014 World Cup with Colombia had put him on the global radar, and Chelsea, under Jose Mourinho, saw him as the perfect winter reinforcement for a team chasing the Premier League title. But it never clicked. Thrown into a winning team mid-season, Cuadrado struggled to adapt to Mourinho's rigid tactical system. His defensive discipline was questioned, his final ball was inconsistent, and in truth, he never looked confident in blue. In total, he made just 15 appearances, only 4 of them starts, and failed to register a single goal or assist. By the time the 2015-16 season kicked off, Cuadrado was already out on loan, first to Juventus, where everything changed. In Turin, he flourished, recast as a right wing-back in a fluid, attack-minded system. Cuadrado's explosive dribbling and relentless work rate made him one of Juve's most consistent performers. The man who had looked lost at Stamford Bridge became a title winner, a key figure in multiple Serie A triumphs, and one of the best transitional wide
players in Europe. Chelsea officially sold him to Juventus in 2017, taking a modest loss, but freeing a player who clearly needed a different environment to thrive. Cuadrado's Chelsea career was short, misfiring and underwhelming, but it was never about his talent. It was about timing, fit and patience. And in that sense, Stamford Bridge was never the right stage. Still, his journey is a reminder. Even great players can struggle in the wrong system and still rise again somewhere else.
He was just a teenager when Chelsea came calling. A wonder kid from West Brom's academy, full of flair and fearlessness, tipped to be the next great English attacking midfielder. Izzy Brown's Chelsea chapter began with hope, but like so many before him, it never got the fairy tale ending. Signed in 2013 when he was just 16, Isaiah Izzy Brown had already made his Premier League debut, becoming one of the youngest players ever to feature in the competition. Chelsea moved quickly, seeing in him the perfect blend of athleticism and creative spark. He was the type of talent that made youth scouts believe in magic, an elegant number 10 who could glide past defenders and unlock tight games. At Cobham, he shone in the academy. Brown was part of a golden crop that included the likes of Tammy Abraham, Mason Mount and Dominic Solanke, helping Chelsea win the FA Youth Cup and UEFA Youth League, scoring crucial goals and standing out as one of the team's creative leaders. But for all his success at youth level, first-team opportunities were non-existent. He made just one senior appearance, a brief cameo under Jose Mourinho in May 2015. After that, his journey followed the well-trodden path of loan spells: Vitesse, Rotherham, Huddersfield, Brighton, Leeds, Luton and Sheffield Wednesday. It was at Huddersfield, during their 2016-17 promotion campaign, where Brown truly caught fire again, playing a key role in their rise to the Premier League. But injuries would become his greatest opponent. A devastating ACL injury in 2018 derailed his progress, and the years that followed became a battle not for stardom, but for fitness. Chelsea eventually released him in 2021. After a short spell with Preston, Brown sadly retired in 2023, aged just 26, after failing to fully recover from persistent knee issues. Izzy Brown's Chelsea tale isn't one of goals or glory, but of potential, perseverance, and the harsh realities of modern football. He was once the future, and while that future never arrived, his story remains etched in the hearts of youth coaches, academy fans, and anyone who knows how thin the line is between promise and pain.
From the moment Jeremy Boga touched the ball at Cobham, there was a sense of electricity. Low to the ground, silky on the dribble, and fearless in possession. He was a winger made in the street football mould, a baller's baller. And for those who watched him rise through Chelsea's youth system, he was something special. Born in Marseille, raised in London and of Ivorian descent, Boga joined Chelsea's academy at just 12 years old. As he developed, it became clear he was one of the most naturally gifted dribblers in the entire system. Unpredictable, explosive, and impossible to mark one-on-one. He starred for the U21s and Youth League teams, often looking a level above his peers. His first team debut came on the opening day of the 2017-18 season under Antonio Conte in a chaotic home match against Burnley. Boga was handed a surprise start, a bold signal of trust from the manager. But just 18 minutes in, Gary Cahill was sent off and Conte had to sacrifice Boga for a defender. It was a cruel twist of fate. That would be his only official appearance for the club. From there, he went on loan, Rennes, Granada, then Sassuolo, and it was in Serie A where Boga truly exploded. Under Roberto De Zerbi at Sassuolo, he was unleashed, no longer playing within the safe structures of development football. Boga thrived on freedom and flair. He danced past defenders, cut inside with venom, and became one of the most feared dribblers in Italy. His 2019-20 season was his breakout: 11 goals, dazzling performances against giants, and a growing reputation as a winger who could hurt anyone. Many Chelsea fans began to wonder, did we let one go too soon? Chelsea had a buyback clause but never activated it. Instead, Boga continued his career in Italy, eventually joining Atalanta and later Nice in League One. Jeremy Boga's Chelsea story was just a prologue, a single appearance, a flash of hope, and a sliding doors moment lost to a red card. But elsewhere, he bloomed. And while he never became a Stamford Bridge star, he's a reminder of the depth of talent that's passed through Chelsea's doors, and of how thin the line can be between breakthrough and departure.
When Pedro swapped the Camp Nou for Stamford Bridge in 2015, he arrived not as a prospect or a project, but as a proven winner. A man who had scored in Champions League finals, lifted every major trophy with Barcelona, and played for one of the greatest club sides in history. And yet, at Chelsea, he still had more to give. Signed for around £21 million in the summer of 2015, hijacked from under Manchester United's nose, Pedro was one of Jose Mourinho's final signings before the Portuguese manager's second reign unravelled. But even amid the turbulence of that season, Pedro made an instant impression. On his debut against West Brom, he scored one and assisted another, showing the pace, sharpness and directness that had defined his game in La Liga. Pedro was not your typical flashy winger. He was a silent assassin, relentlessly intelligent in his movement, clinical in front of goal and tireless in pressing. He knew when to drift, when to dart, when to shoot and when to pass. He wasn't Eden Hazard's replacement, he was his perfect foil. Under Antonio Conte, Pedro truly found his groove. Playing as a right-sided forward in the famed 3-4-3, he formed a deadly trio with Hazard and Diego Costa during the 2016-17 title-winning season. He chipped in with 9 Premier League goals, many of them important, including screamers against Spurs and Everton. His understanding of space and his selfless running helped Chelsea dominate. He continued to be a key contributor under Maurizio Sarri, especially in the 2018-19 Europa League campaign, where he was one of the team's most reliable performers. In the final against Arsenal, Pedro scored Chelsea's second goal, making him the first player in history to score in the Champions League, Europa League and UEFA Super Cup finals, a true big game player. Across 5 seasons, Pedro made 206 appearances, scored 43 goals, and lifted the Premier League, FA Cup and Europa League. He brought elite experience, a winner's mentality and clutch performances when it mattered most. He wasn't a social media darling, he wasn't flash, but he was efficient, decisive and professional to the end. Pedro left in 2020 for AS Roma, his Chelsea chapter complete, but his legacy sealed as a trusted soldier, a serial winner, and a man whose contribution often came when the stakes were highest. Pedro may not have been the star at Chelsea, but he was the player who always rose to the moment.
When Chelsea signed Kennedy in the summer of 2015, they weren't just buying a footballer, they were rolling the dice on raw, untamed potential. At 19 years old, he was fearless, flamboyant and full of South American finesse, a left-footed wrecking ball who could play as a winger, a wing-back or even an emergency striker. And at times it felt like he might become something serious. Other times, it felt like no one, not even Kennedy himself, knew what was coming next. Signed from Fluminense, Kennedy arrived with comparisons to other Brazilian mavericks. He had power, a rocket of a shot, and dribbling that often bordered on chaotic genius. In his first season under Jose Mourinho, then later Gus Hiddink, he made 20 appearances, scoring a memorable goal against Norwich with his first touch of the game, after just 39 seconds. Chelsea fans saw flashes, bursts of electricity, but they also saw inconsistency, defensive lapses, and a player still figuring out who he was. Then came the loans, and many of them, from Watford, where he barely played, to Newcastle United, where he had one of the best spells of his career. Under Rafa Benitez in 2017-18, Kennedy looked reborn, direct, dangerous and decisive. His performances helped Newcastle beat relegation, and fans at St James's Park adored him. But even there, it didn't last. The next season his form dipped again, and the magic evaporated. Back at Chelsea, he became a serial loanee. Getafe, Granada, Flamengo and Real Valladolid. In Spain and Brazil, he showed glimpses, outrageous long-range goals, moments of brilliance, but never enough to make Chelsea truly consider reintegrating him. By now, he had become a symbol of the club's loan army, more known for being still on Chelsea's books than for anything happening on the pitch. In 2022, after 7 years, 5 loans and just 30 appearances, Kennedy quietly left Chelsea for Real Valladolid. No big send-off, no farewell montage, just the quiet closing of a strange winding chapter.
He was the chosen one, the next jewel from Cobham, a boy with velvet feet, sky-high potential and the aura of a superstar before his 18th birthday. Callum Hudson-Odoi wasn't just a prospect, he was a movement. For a brief moment it felt like Chelsea had its own Jadon Sancho, its own Kylian Mbappe in the making, and yet, somehow, the story never unfolded the way it was supposed to. Born in London and shaped at Cobham, Hudson-Odoi rose quickly through the ranks. By 2017, he was already a standout in the academy, dazzling in the UEFA Youth League, skipping past defenders like they weren't there, and scoring goals that made scouts and fans take notice. His first team debut came under Antonio Conte, but it was under Maurizio Sarri that he exploded into wider consciousness. In the 2018-19 season, Hudson-Odoi became a fan favourite almost instantly. Fast, direct, fearless, he attacked with flair and precision. Whether it was in the Europa League or domestic cup games, he made his minutes count. His connection with the fans was electric, and then came the shock. Bayern Munich made a move, a serious one. Chelsea held firm. They rejected multiple bids, some up to £40 million. Fans cheered. The club had learned its lesson. This one we keep. A new contract followed. Callum was handed the iconic number 20 shirt. Everything seemed set. Then the Achilles injury. In April 2019, just as he was establishing himself, Hudson-Odoi suffered a devastating Achilles tendon rupture, an injury that would quietly alter the course of his career. Though he recovered physically, he never quite regained the same burst, the same explosiveness, and the Chelsea dressing room kept shifting. Under Frank Lampard, he was given chances but never locked down a starting role. Thomas Tuchel came in and used him everywhere, winger, wing-back, sometimes even deeper, but never with consistency. There were bright flashes, a brilliant assist here, a composed goal there, but not a breakout season, not the stardom everyone expected. In 2022, after years of uncertainty, Hudson-Odoi went on loan to Bayer Leverkusen. It was meant to be his reboot, a fresh stage to shine, but the move was underwhelming. In 2023, he left Chelsea permanently, signing for Nottingham Forest, hoping to finally reset his career without the shadow of Cobham expectation. Callum Hudson-Odoi's Chelsea journey is a lesson in how fragile the ascent can be. He had everything, talent, time, and a club desperate to believe in him. But between injury, inconsistency, and tactical chaos, the fairy tale never fully arrived.
Signed in 2012 from Anderlecht as a teenager, Musonda was seen as one of Europe's most exciting young prospects. He turned down interest from Barcelona and Real Madrid to join Chelsea, a decision based on faith in development. And in the youth system, he delivered. Oh, did he deliver? Musonda was a magician for Chelsea's academy sides, quick, nimble, two-footed, and with the creativity of a classic number 10, he starred in back-to-back FA Youth Cup wins and shone in the UEFA Youth League, forming a golden generation alongside Tammy Abraham, Mason Mount, and Fikayo Tomori. But first-team opportunities were limited. In 2016, he was sent on loan to Real Betis, and under Gus Poyet, he hit the ground running, dazzling La Liga audiences with his flair and fearlessness. Chelsea fans started believing the hype. He returned to the bridge and finally made his senior debut in 2017, scoring his first goal in a League Cup tie against Nottingham Forest. He dropped to his knees and wept, years of hard work finally paying off. But then came disaster. Injuries, first minor, then devastating. A torn posterior cruciate ligament in 2018, sustained while on loan at Vitesse, was career-altering. Doctors told him he had a 20% chance of ever playing professional football again. Most players would have retired. Musonda didn't. He spent 3 years rehabbing, 3 years without competitive football. While Chelsea won titles and academy teammates became stars, Musonda was fighting just to walk without pain. In 2021, he made a brief comeback, playing for Chelsea's under-23 seconds, still dreaming of a return. In 2022, after 10 years at Chelsea, Musonda quietly left the club. He later signed for Levante in Spain, determined to write a new chapter, even if the world had stopped watching.
Charlie Musonda's Chelsea story is one of tragedy, resilience, and unmatched heart. He may not have become the player everyone dreamed of, but his courage to keep going, to keep chasing the game despite every setback, is something few will ever understand. And for those who saw him at his best, if only briefly, it was enough to know he was special.
Pulisic had already made waves at Borussia Dortmund. Quick, intelligent and fearless with the ball at his feet, he became the youngest non-German to score in the Bundesliga. He was electric in transition, lethal in open space and technically sharp in tight quarters. But what truly set him apart was his mindset, aggressive, humble and relentless. He joined Chelsea officially in summer 2019, just as Eden Hazard left for Real Madrid. And while comparisons were inevitable, Pulisic didn't flinch. Under Frank Lampard, he hit the ground running, and by Project Restart, he was Chelsea's most dangerous attacker. That end to the 2019-20 season was pure chaos and magic. He tore apart Man City, danced through Liverpool and scored in the FA Cup final against Arsenal before cruelly pulling his hamstring mid-run. That moment, the burst, the brilliance, the breakdown, became symbolic of his Chelsea career. Injuries would haunt him. Over the next 3 seasons under managers like Lampard, Tuchel and Potter, Pulisic remained a tantalising talent, capable of beating defenders and scoring big goals, but unable to stay fit long enough to build rhythm. There were still moments, a Champions League goal versus Real Madrid, clutch performances in tight games, and a key role in Chelsea's 2021 Champions League triumph. He didn't start the final, but he was there, he was part of it. But consistency never came. And in a club constantly cycling through players, managers and tactics, Pulisic never found a true home at Stamford Bridge. He was often played out of position, as a wing-back, a false nine, a left winger tasked with defensive duties, and slowly the spark faded. In summer 2023, Pulisic left Chelsea for AC Milan, seeking a reset in Serie A. And in Milan he's been reborn, playing with joy, scoring freely, and reminding the world why he once carried the hopes of a nation. Christian Pulisic's Chelsea story was one of bursts and brilliance, of setbacks and stutters. He was never quite the new Hazard, but at his peak, he gave Chelsea fans reason to believe in something electric. And though his time at the Bridge ended quietly, his legacy will always carry that mix of what was and what might have been.
There was a time when Hakim Ziyech looked like a wizard disguised as a footballer. A left foot dipped in silk and venom, vision that bent reality, passes cut through time. At Ajax, he was the heartbeat of a generational team. At Chelsea, he was a guest star in a show that kept changing genres. When Chelsea announced Ziyech's signing in February 2020, fans were buzzing. His performances in the 2018-19 Champions League had stunned Europe, from tearing apart Real Madrid to dragging Ajax within seconds of the final. He had flair, arrogance, intelligence. For £33 million, he looked like a bargain. Ziyech officially arrived at Stamford Bridge that summer, a marquee name in a transfer window that also brought Timo Werner, Ben Chilwell, Kai Havertz and Edouard Mendy. It was a new dawn under Frank Lampard, and Ziyech was meant to be the creator-in-chief. But his Chelsea debut was delayed. Injury struck before he could even build momentum. When he finally played, he dazzled. His left foot delivered chaos, crosses from impossible angles, defence-splitting passes, and those signature curling shots from the right flank. Against Burnley and Sheffield United, he looked like a game changer. Then the Lampard era collapsed. Under Thomas Tuchel, Ziyech's role became inconsistent. The system changed. 3-4-2-1, and Ziyech didn't always fit. He was too slow for the wing, too unorthodox for the number 10. Still, he had moments. He scored the winner in the FA Cup semi-final against Manchester City. He netted in crucial Premier League ties. He worked hard, even when the game didn't suit him. But the magic never stuck. For a player of his genius, Chelsea often felt like a cage. The club demanded intensity, structure, pressing. Ziyech offered artistry, risk, unpredictability. And in a team of revolving managers, Tuchel, Potter, Lampard again, he never got a consistent run. Despite some strong stretches, especially in early 2022, the trust seemed fleeting. By 2023, Ziyech was on the fringes. A move to Paris Saint-Germain collapsed at the last minute due to paperwork errors. That failed exit became symbolic. A player desperate to break free, trapped by chaos. He eventually left on loan to Galatasaray and later completed a permanent move in 2024. Hakim Ziyech's Chelsea spell was a story of a diamond left in the wrong setting. He had the ability, the vision, the swagger, but at a club chasing identity, his role was never clear. He wasn't bad, far from it, but he never became Chelsea's.
When Chelsea signed Mihailo Mudryk in January 2023, it felt like a statement of intent and defiance. They had hijacked Arsenal's months-long pursuit in a dramatic swoop, an eye-watering £88.5 million deal for a 22-year-old with just 44 Senior League appearances in Ukraine. It wasn't just a signing, it was a gamble, a thunderbolt of raw potential bought in the middle of a storm. Mudryk came from Shakhtar Donetsk, where he had torn through defences with his blistering pace and directness. In the Champions League group stage, he lit up games against RB Leipzig and Celtic, showcasing electric acceleration, tight dribbling and a fearless mindset. He didn't just run, he exploded. His highlights went viral. A Ukrainian Neymar, a young Gareth Bale, the hype escalated fast. Chelsea were desperate for excitement. The team was faltering under Graham Potter, the identity unclear, the goals scarce. Mudryk was supposed to be the chaos agent, the winger who would stretch defences, bring flair back to Stamford Bridge and lead a new generation. His debut teased that promise. Off the bench against Liverpool, he roasted James Milner in one run, left fans on their feet and looked like a live wire. But from there, reality hit hard. Mudryk struggled. The transition from Ukrainian football to the Premier League is steep. Add the pressure of a mammoth fee, culture shock, language barriers, tactical instability, and a club in disarray, and it's no surprise things stalled. His touch was inconsistent, decision-making rushed, confidence dipped, the spark flickered, then dimmed. To his credit, he kept working. He never hid. In flashes, a late equaliser versus Newcastle, a confident goal versus Fulham, or that rocket in pre-season, the old Mudryk reappeared. But consistency remained elusive. He was being coached by his fourth Chelsea manager within a year. Off the pitch, he drew headlines for social media posts, body language, and criticism about his maturity, most of it unfairly magnified. He was young, he needed time, but this was Chelsea, and time is rarely given. By 2024, under Mauricio Pochettino, Mudryk started seeing more structured development. Moments of composure began appearing, better positioning, improved timing of runs, even defensive work rate. But even then, it still felt like a player caught between instinct and instruction, speed without full control. But now that future is on pause. In a stunning turn, Mudryk was handed a doping ban, ruling him out of action for the foreseeable future. The speedster who once symbolised Chelsea's next era is now sidelined, not by injury, but by controversy, casting a long shadow over what was already a turbulent journey.
Born in Barnet, Madueke began at Crystal Palace, then joined Tottenham's youth ranks, but by 16 he made a bold move, rejecting a pro deal to sign with PSV Eindhoven. It wasn't a glamour choice, it was a development one, and in the Netherlands he thrived. With swagger, composure and a left foot built for highlight reels, Madueke quickly made a name for himself. He drifted inside from the right, cut defenders to ribbons and let fly with venom. Dutch football gave him freedom and he made it count. By 2023, Chelsea, in full rebuild mode, brought him back to London in a £29 million deal. Young, technical, fearless, he fit the profile, but stepping into Stamford Bridge mid-season in the middle of chaos wasn't easy. At first, Madueke was in and out of the squad. He faced stiff competition on the wings from Mudryk, Sterling, Ziyech, Pulisic, all fighting for minutes in a team still finding itself. And under Graham Potter, there wasn't much structure to lean on. But when he got his chances, he brought a different energy, confident 1v1s, tricky footwork, sharp ball control. He scored a slick goal away at Bournemouth, a small glimpse of what he could offer, not just pace, but purpose. You could tell this kid came from street football. The way he played, the way he carried himself, it was raw and real. Under Mauricio Pochettino, Madueke started to mature. There were still questions about his defensive discipline and decision making, but his dribbling remained elite. He was fearless in possession. He had that give me the ball attitude, even when things weren't going his way. And when Chelsea's attack looked flat, Madueke often looked like the one willing to try something different. By late 2024, he was getting more consistent minutes, adding goals and assists to his game, but also showing he could track back, press, and fight for the badge. Still, injuries and tactical rotations made it hard for him to fully explode. Like many in Chelsea's youthful rebuild, Madueke was growing under the microscope. Noni Madueke isn't a finished product, but he's a player with edge. He's got the sauce, the street flair, and the desire to prove everyone wrong. In a club known for burning through talent, he's fighting to be the one who sticks, not just for the culture, but for the football. When Chelsea signed Raheem Sterling in the summer of 2022, it felt like the start of something serious. A proven Premier League winner, a Champions League finalist, England's most electric attacker for half a decade, in a dressing room suddenly full of projects and prospects, Sterling was supposed to be the grown-up in the room.
After a trophy-laden run at Manchester City where he scored over 130 goals, Sterling joined Chelsea for £47.5 million, a significant coup during Todd Boehly's first transfer window. He wasn't a rising star, he was the star. At 27, entering his prime, this was meant to be his team. He arrived with intent. First pre-season, he looked sharp. First games, he was Chelsea's only attacking threat. He scored twice against Leicester and looked like the only player in a disjointed system who knew where the goal was, but quickly the chaos began. Under Thomas Tuchel, the tactics were rigid and cautious. Sterling was often isolated. Tuchel was gone by September. Graham Potter came in with promises of attacking freedom, but in reality, it was tactical overthinking and endless tinkering. Sterling played left wing, right wing, false nine, even wing back at times. He was lost in translation. Despite the instability, Sterling kept fighting. He chipped in with goals, crucial ones in the Champions League, a few in the league, but it was never fluid. He'd pick up the ball wide, but the movement ahead of him was static. The team lacked chemistry, rhythm and belief. For a player used to Pep's precision and England's structure, it was like moving from orchestra to jazz with no sheet music. In 2023-24 under Pochettino, Sterling saw more structure. He produced big goals, including a brace against Luton, and his dribbling sharpness returned, but consistency still evaded him. Sometimes he was Chelsea's most experienced attacker, other times anonymous. He was caught between two identities, too senior to be developed, too isolated to thrive. Raheem Sterling's Chelsea career became a study in timing. He came to be the difference maker, but ended up a passenger in a project that never quite took off. The ability was never in question, but the environment never fit. In August 2024, Sterling made the bold move to Arsenal, a new system, a club with momentum, a second wind in North London. But instead of a revival, it turned into a struggle. Injuries, reduced minutes, and an Arsenal front line firing without him made it hard to settle. His influence faded quickly, and what was meant to be a fresh start became another frustrating chapter. Now, Sterling's legacy in West London, and beyond, feels unfinished. He was a proven star who walked into unproven systems, and no matter how hard he tried, the stage never matched the script.
Once hailed as England's golden boy, Jadon Sancho's career has been anything but predictable. He was the rebel who left Manchester City for Dortmund at 17 and lit the Bundesliga on fire. The flair, the goals, the assists, the swagger, Sancho was the face of the new generation. But by the time he finally arrived at Chelsea in 2025, that sparkle had dimmed and he came not as a superstar, but a salvage project. Let's rewind. Sancho's breakout at Borussia Dortmund was electric. Direct, fearless and dazzling in transition. His move to Manchester United in 2021 was supposed to be the next step, but it became a slow-burning undoing. He struggled to fit in, clashed with managers and faded from the spotlight. By the time he was loaned back to Dortmund, his United career was already on life support. In 2025, Chelsea took a chance. The price was right, the timing made sense, Sancho needed a reset and Chelsea, a club full of second chances, gave him a platform. No pressure, no promises, just an opportunity. At Stamford Bridge, Sancho had moments. Subtle flicks of quality, neat link-up play, calm under pressure. But he never truly caught fire. There was no resurgence, no roar back to form, just a steady, sometimes quiet presence in a squad already full of wide options. He wasn't bad, he just wasn't transformative. And in a Chelsea side still struggling to find its identity, he often looked like a player between two worlds. Not quite the fearless kid from Dortmund, not quite the lost soul from Old Trafford, just stuck in limbo. And when it came time for a decision, Chelsea made theirs. Despite internal interest in keeping him, Sancho's wage demands were too high, especially for a club tightening its financial model. No permanent offer was made, and just like that, his time in blue was over. He returned to Manchester United, not with a bang, but with a question mark. A player still searching for the right stage, still trying to find the version of himself that once thrilled the world. Jadon Sancho's Chelsea story wasn't a disaster, but it wasn't a rebirth either. It was a pause, a footnote, a quiet flickering chapter in a career that still waits for its next ignition.
Signed during the summer of quiet restructuring, Neto wasn't brought in to dominate headlines, but to offer clarity. A natural winger in a squad overloaded with hybrid forwards, someone who could hug the touchline, beat his man and deliver with purpose. He hit the ground running, no adaptation period, no fuss, just clean, confident football. Throughout the 2024-25 season, Neto became a quietly important piece, not the face of the project, but a key part of it. He scored 4 goals in the Premier League, 1 in the League Cup and 3 in the FIFA Club World Cup, taking his season tally to 9 goals. And beyond the stats, it was the way he played, direct, decisive and refreshingly unfussy, that made him stand out in a system still searching for cohesion. Whether starting or coming off the bench, Neto always looked engaged. He stretched the pitch when Chelsea needed width, he kept defenders honest, he brought structure to a sometimes chaotic attack, and in big moments, especially in the Club World Cup, he delivered with confidence. But with Chelsea, one good season is never the end of the story, it's just the opening chapter. Neto has been a strong implementation into a squad full of moving parts, a functional piece in a team that's learning how to function. Yet questions still linger. Is he the real deal? Can he evolve beyond a reliable winger and become a match winner? Only time will tell. For now, Pedro Neto is doing what Chelsea signed him to do. Bring balance, bring energy, bring clarity. And in a team where not many wingers stick, that in itself is already something rare.
Still just a teenager, George is part of the new wave, following in the footsteps of names like Callum Hudson-Odoi, Jeremy Boga and Charlie Musonda before him. But what sets Tyreek apart is his mix of technical quality and decision-making. He's not just fast, he's composed. Not just a dribbler, but someone who sees the bigger picture. He glides past defenders, but always with purpose. 2024-25 was his coming out party. George made his senior team debut early in the campaign and was soon fully integrated into the squad. The UEFA Conference League gave him a platform, 12 appearances, including 4 starts, a goal and 2 assists. He was part of the squad that went all the way to the final, and his calmness under the European spotlight didn't go unnoticed. In the Premier League, he made 8 appearances, scoring a crucial equaliser against Fulham, a last-gasp goal that sparked a dramatic win and helped seal Chelsea's qualification for the Champions League. That strike also earned him a slice of history, Chelsea's youngest Premier League scorer since Callum Hudson-Odoi in 2020. He made 2 FA Cup appearances, registering 2 assists, and also featured in the EFL Cup. Even while thriving in the senior setup, George remained dominant at youth level, scoring a hat-trick for the U21s in the Premier League Cup and winning the Men's Academy Player of the Year. Internationally, he continued to shine for England U19s with 12 caps and a goal. Tyreek George's Chelsea journey is just beginning. No guarantees, no shortcuts, just a local boy trying to etch his name into a club that rarely waits for anyone. But if this season is any indication, Chelsea might just have something special on their hands.
From the early flickers of Duff and Arjen Robben to the chaos of Musonda, Kennedy and Kakuta, from the brilliance of Eden Hazard to the emerging promise of Tyreek George, Chelsea's legacy on the flanks has been a story of reinvention, risk and relentless turnover. Not every name got the spotlight. There are honourable mentions. Players like Diego Moreira, Atto Amper and Leo Castledine, young Cobham talents who've yet to taste a proper first-team run. Their stories haven't been written yet, but the potential is there. Then there are the almost wingers, those who played out but never truly belonged there. David Zappacosta, occasionally deployed out of position.